Good evening, Council. Tonight, I'm not going to take up a bunch of your time. I have a very brief update of what's been going on in my department for 2018 and just give a brief overview of what we're going to get into for 2019. 2017 into 2018 started kind of a transition from us going out and mapping everything out to just like in terms of drainage, waterworks, and wastewater infrastructure to basically just keeping up with things. So we reached that point where we've got everything mapped out, and now we're just trying to keep up with a backlog of changes that were made. So the data is basically a living piece of information. So as a valve breaks, we have to go keep up with waterworks. Say they changed it out. If they replaced a pipe from a 6-inch to 8-inch, we keep up with it. That way the data is current and up to date. Otherwise, it's no good. We also, in early 2018, we received our high-resolution aerial photography that we had shot and flown in late in December 2017, and we added that to the database, and we share that out with the various departments. And we also received some high-resolution LiDAR data, which is it's a airborne platform survey measurement that they use to get surface elevations throughout the parish. That was given to us by the USGS, which was funded by CPRA and USGS, at a cost savings of about, I think, $89,000 to the parish. So I just received that about, I'd say, a month and a half, 2 months ago, and been processing it. And it's about 8 terabytes of data, so we finally made it through that. And so we're keeping up with Public Works with all the drainage stuff, where we're getting in the inverts, profiles of catch basin, of culverts, inverts for the catch basins as needed. You know, we get called in a lot if a resident wants to put in if he's got open swell drainage and he wants to close it in. We usually go out and shoot the grade for him, give it to the engineers. They design it and give it back to us, and everything's hopefully set at the proper elevation once we're done. Other things, I just threw this in. This is something that we did today that we're just, because they'll call us when there's drainage problems or flooding problems. They'll call us in to go shoot grades, elevations, like at slab elevations in relation to surface elevations and the surrounding drainage. So they use a lot of that to kind of make plans. Yeah, like this is an example of the mod air stuff that we were looking at earlier. But we spend a lot of this is something we do on a regular basis. I don't really talk about too much, but we don't just do mapping and drainage. We do a lot of property boundaries, right-of-way easements. Stay busy with that. For 2019, we're gonna start looking at some of the elevation changes that we had between the 2014 and 2017 LiDAR data sets, and in conjunction with some levee surveys that we're going to be doing. We're starting on the easternmost part of the parish, over by the West Bank and Vicinity Protection Levee, and we're going to compare those changes that we get ground surveys to the LiDAR data, and kind of keep up with this to identify potential problem areas along the levee systems. And that's kind of a new project that we want to do, along with all the drainage and waterworks and wastewater surveys that we do. But it's a pretty detailed survey that we have. I mean, you got to walk every 50 feet, take measurements around the levees in the parish, and there's a lot of we do profiles, cross sections of the levees all the way through, and we store that. And we're starting to keep a lot better track of everything, records of benchmarks and everything that we're using, and we're going to keep that in a database. And when it comes to certify the levees, we'll have that information available to whoever's going to need it. Or Public Works, I guess, would probably use it. But other than that, I mean, we're kind of in cruise mode now. I mean, just if y'all have any questions or anything, just let me know.
Thank you, Louis. Mm-hmm. We've got a question from Councilman Woodruff.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Louis, the aerial surveys and the ground surveys, is there a big difference or significance in the readings you get from the two of them, or are they pretty much the same?
I mean, there can be. I mean, the aerial surveys, is taking, you're flying, you're not making contact with the surface, and it takes the average of about 30 points in a square meter. And when we're doing the ground survey, you have an antenna with a rod with a pretty sharp point on it, so it depends who's putting it in the ground. Some guys stab it in the ground so it won't move. Some guys just place it lightly on the ground. So the LiDAR, the airborne platform, gets the point of first return, the signal, and that's the elevation. So it hits something, it bounces back, and that's your elevation. Whereas we got, if that rod penetrates the ground into the surface, 2 inches, you're already 2 inches off. So if the ground's really, if we're doing it on a disc, on a rod, on a piece of concrete, it's no problem. But if you're on the ground, the soft ground, like a levee, that can cause some differences there.
Okay, say you're not stabbing it in the ground like it should be. How many tenths are we looking at difference between aerial and, like 6 tenths, 3 tenths, what?
It varies widely, but some of the stuff, and don't quote me on this, I was looking at some of the stuff a couple days ago. I'd say 2 tenths or something. I was looking at things around 2 tenths, and it's pretty consistent. If you like 2 tenths of a foot, not two, it's 2 tenths of a foot, not an inch. So you're looking at a couple inches, and that's just the difference between the two platforms. And typically, I think it's. I'm pretty sure any surveyor would tell you there's going to be differences between different platforms, different methods and techniques that you use.
Any other questions from the council for Louis? No? All right. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Fauché.
I did want to add one quick thing. All of the servitudes that we've been surveying, even though they're from outside surveyors, we ask for all of the data electronically on the Louisiana floodplain. So I give that to Louis, and he's putting that in his database also. So any of the surveys over the last 2 years that we've been taking will never need to be repeated.
Very good.
Thanks for
Good
bringing
use
that
of
up. So,
All right. Thank you.
all right, thanks.
Oh, nope, sorry. One more. Ms. Cluley, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Using the surveys that you've gotten from Mr. Fauché, have you come up with any discrepancies, noticeable discrepancies that
No.
would make a change on either their or your survey work?
No. Well, we did have some, and this is what we're going back to surveying everything. We started surveying the levees over by the diversion canal earlier this year, and it's the third time we do it that we start. It's because in order to compare apples to apples, you have to have a known reference point, a benchmark. These things, Louisiana's sinking constantly, and they're always updating these models that reflect the changes, as things compact, as it subsides. So we have to get a known benchmark, a reference point, and whatever the CPRA told us that we have to go back to I think it's a 2004 or 2006 model and use those numbers. So we have to go to a reference point. There's a rod in the ground. Even though we measure it with our updated software, it might tell us that it's 10 feet tall. But when we go back in time and we're measuring the same rod, it might be 9.5 feet tall. So we have to force it to say it's 9.5 feet tall to compare all the adjustments on it. Everything's relative to that benchmark at a known reference point, if it makes any sense.
Well, and I guess it would make a difference, too, depending on if it has rained, like, over the
Well,
last couple of weeks.
That benchmark doesn't move. It's in the ground.
That benchmark doesn't, but
No,
your elevations
Our elevation,
can fluctuate.
they can, but we've compared stuff like on hard surfaces. The only thing I went back is that Public Works had all of their platforms on their pump stations shot in. And I went, in order to verify that I was using the correct settings, so if they come and ask me for some elevation for their staff gauges, for their telemetry system, that I'm on the same system that they are. So I went back and checked all the discs, all the discs that the surveyors put in, and everything matched perfectly.
Do you ever do water elevation?
Yes, we do that all the time.
Okay.
Canal bottoms, water elevations, and we work pretty closely with Terry and the telemetry crew.
Thank you.
So,
Any more questions from the council? All right.